Have you ever noticed that there are times in life when you put in twice as much effort, yet the situation gets much more complicated? You think more, try more, worry more, however the outcomes not only don't get better, but they are more difficult to interpret. Then there are other moments. You're the same person, same life, same relationships. You're just breathing more slowly, temporarily putting your worries aside. The odd thing is that nothing changes in life. Your inner state is the only thing that shifts. People don't fail because they're incapable, but because anxieties dominate their thoughts all the time. And it's precisely that anxiety that makes us rush, overreact, and look in the wrong directions, making life and relationships more difficult than they need to be. But once you step out of that dominative noise in your head, once you become calmer so you can hear yourself, everything begins to fall into the path that's meant for you. Guys, in today's video I will guide you through the most important aspects that keep your head noisy instead of calm. And I can assure you one thing, everything starts to fall into the right place as soon as you stop fretting. Alright everyone, I think that we have all experienced that moment in life when we feel like we have the entire sky on our shoulders and we get tighter over little details. Have you? Me, hundreds of times. You feel restless when the communication goes unanswered. It only takes a scenario that hasn't even taken place yet to make your head spin. You believe it to be fear, however guys, it isn't. The ego is the one to blame. Your ear is whispered by a very tiny but loud part of you. The ego is the part of us that always believes is the center of the universe. It believes that everything is dependent upon it, that life will veer off the track if it lacks control, predictability, and tension. If I look back to my 20s, I can relate a lot to that. Therefore guys, if you really deeply think about it, worry, it's not a soul's warning. It is a cry of an ego that is fighting for its life. We constantly fool ourselves because of our pride. And this stupid self-deception is the source of the ego's belief that the world will fall apart in front of it if it lets go, doesn't worry, or doesn't tense up to control. Worrying causes you to make poor decisions, act rashly, lose your intuition, and unintentionally produce the same things you were afraid of, because it views letting go as a sign of failure. The ego is not able to let go. You become more alert when you let go, which is the mature part of yourself that allows you to think not accordingly to an impulse. You fail more when you worry more. Things become more clear the more you let go. Let's explain it on an example. I need you to consider that you are tugging on a string. The more you try to maintain it straight and stop it from shaking, the more it vibrates and veers off the track. Life is exactly the same. You attempt to manage it, but it eludes you. An anxious person is unable to create. An anxious person is unable to establish meaningful connections with anyone. An anxious person is unable to recognize the opportunities that are in front of them. Everything starts to fall into a right place when you stop worrying. Not because the world suddenly becomes more kind, but because you cease to oppose your own life's organic flow. Alright guys, so let me begin this by saying that a deeper reality starts to show up once we understand that the unconscious only communicates once the mind is silent. Many of your anxieties stem from aspects of yourself that you haven't yet dared to confront, rather than external factors. Anxiety, it's not what lies ahead. It's the sound of your inner darkness, attempting to come to the surface. What you resist not only persists, but grows in size. The more you reject a certain aspect of yourself, the more that aspect wants to surface. Not through soft noises, but through anxiety, concern, or unclear sense of fear. Guys, it is so important to remember that the darkness's final desire is to be seen. Be mindful. Each kind of concern carries a distinct message. People who constantly feel inadequate, incompetent, or unworthy typically have a darkness of low self-esteem. Today, from the place I am in my life, I can tell you guys, surrender. Surrender to all your weaknesses and insecurities you worry about. Because not only once you embrace them, they become your biggest strength, but soon after, you will realize that they are your biggest advantage. There is a story that I'm going to read for you so we can reach a conclusion together. There was a woman who assumed Poles were upset when they provided brief responses. She thought her spouse was going to abandon her when she was preoccupied. She took this anxiety into every relationship, making things more difficult than she planned. "What are you most afraid of?" the therapist asked her during one session. "I'm afraid they will leave," she sobbed. However, the reality became apparent as they dive deeper. So what is the conclusion to this story? Guys, in reality, she wasn't terrified to be abandoned. Do you remember what I just said a minute earlier? Each kind of concern carries a distinct message. When she was 7 years old, her mother left the house for days without saying anything, and she was afraid of experiencing it again. Her concern belonged to memories rather than present moment. And that is, ladies, and I hope gentlemen too, a perfect moment to mention psychological coherence. The situation I just mentioned is a perfect example to that, as we deal here with the collapse of time and space, as she is operating from the brain's perspective that's 7 years old in the body that's 30 years old. Because coherence is a consistent alignment between your inner world and your outer actions. So I am going to close that story with a final conclusion. Don't label the people, label their behavior with less judgment and more understanding. When you stop worrying, you don't just regain calm, you regain sight. You recognize what belongs to you and what doesn't. That is when the self, the most mature version of you, sends tiny but precise signals you cannot deny. You see the difference between the path you want and the path you fear. And most importantly, you start hearing the deep voice inside of you again. The voice you lost because of ego's noise. When you stop worrying, everything starts to go well. Not because suddenly the universe favors you, or because suddenly the life bends to your wishes, but because you no longer create a noise that hides your inner guidance. My advice? Be less spiritual, more present in the moment. Because many people use spirituality as a way to escape the moment. Alright guys, my favorite topic has arrived. Have you ever wondered why, apart from your understanding of the darkness and the fact that anxieties are unconscious projections, there are still days when you feel worn out just from thinking too much? Your body feels heavy, exhausted, drained, your mind is not working, your heart is depleted, but it seems like nothing really happened. And this is where things are getting psychologically rich, just not on our convenience. Because at that point you enter more profound level of worry mechanism. It's a level where concern turns into a type of energy leakage rather than an emotion. And that place can feel very lonely, dark and scary. Your psychic energy is drawn towards the worst scenario every time you try to envision the worst possible outcome. It gets bigger the more you think about it. Fear drains your energy the more you experience it. Then there are days when you feel worn out but accomplish nothing. It's not that you're weak, but rather that situation that never happened have silently drained your energy. And do you know, guys, why? Not because she became better, but because she stopped feeding what had a place of existence only in her imagination. And from that moment, her work began to flow, all because she let go. Once you stop worrying, your existence begin to retain its wholeness. Guys, success does not belong to the most beautiful, smartest or talented, but to the most mindful. To those who knows how to collect their energy back to the center instead of letting it leak into places like fear, judgment, or failure scenarios. When you change inside, reality changes as well, not through miracles, but through harmony. Opportunities you could not see become clear. Meetings that seem to be random become clear. What you need appears the moment you need it. When you stop worrying, you create an empty space within your heart, and that space is the room where the life enters. And this is where I want to end today. Sex, love, and connection do not happen in our worries. They don't happen in control. They don't happen in prediction or tension. They happen in presence, because presence, not worry, is where intimacy lives, is where every real relationship actually begins.